Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Oh, it feels like a dentist chair, this.
Amazing. So we're going to go back to life in Bolton. Joe's from the UK. What was life like in your early years in Bolton?
In my early years, well, I was born in 1935. By 1939, we had World War II. So you can imagine no lights, nothing going on. Okay, my brother and myself, we're only young. Let's say I was 4, and the war didn't end until I was 10. So we've got 6 years of just running around, nothing happening. What was very good about it, no lights were on because, of course, we had to have blackouts. So as kids, we just loved it. We enjoyed it. So that was my first 10 years. And then the lights came on.
Wow.
And we could do other things. And education. You know, we worry at the moment about education for our children with COVID. Well, we had 6 years with very little, if any, education. That's why I was a shoemaker.
Tying in your family, to the audience who doesn't know, J.W. Foster and Sons, your grandfather has a shoe business in Bolton. Can you kind of explain what inspired him to start the shoe business, which has a lot of reflection on Reebok today?
Well, my grandfather, his parents were confectioners, but he didn't like the idea of being a confectioner. In fact, he looked at his own grandfather, who was a cobbler repairing shoes. But not only did he repair shoes, he repaired cricket boots. And cricket boots had spikes in the bottom. And my grandfather rather fancied the idea of being a cobbler and probably repairing sports shoes. But the idea he got from his grandfathers, because my grandfather was a member of the what's called Bolton Primrose Harriers. It was an athletic club, and he was a member. And he thought, if I put some spikes in the bottom of my shoes, maybe it will improve my performance. So he got that idea. And in 1895, when he was only 15 years old, he actually invented the spike running shoe. And of course, it did improve his performance. He was a small lad, a bit like me. And his fellow teammates, of course, they looked at him and thinking, this boy is cheating. But it was either that or, well, you've got to make us some of those spikes. And that's how his business started in 1895. By the year 1900, he had a business. He was a cobbler, but he was also now an athletic shoe manufacturer, spike shoes. And that was the start of his business. Do you want to go on more?
Yeah. A follow-up from that. As we do know, that revolutionized the running industry and the sports industry as we know it today is forefront of your grandfather's career. Your father ended up taking over the business, and then you and your brother Jeff joined the business as well. You can kind of explain that period of what your position was like with the company yourself.
I'll continue with grandfather.
Perfect.
Right. By 1904, grandfather had 3 world records in his shoes. By 1908, he also had, I think it was 3 gold medals. His era, though, was the 1920s, the Roaring 20s. That was his real belle pop. I don't know if you remember a film called Chariots of Fire, but it's 3 British athletes. They all won gold medals, and my grandfather had made shoes for them. So those gold medals were won in my grandfather's shoes. And that's brilliant. But unfortunately, my grandfather died in 1933, and as I said earlier, I wasn't born until 1935. But you know, I was born on his birthday, the 18th of May. And my grandmother insisted I brought my name with me. So I'm called Joe. He was Joseph William, I'm Joseph William, shortened, of course, to Joe. So I am Joe, and I'm born in 1935, and my grandmother insisted that was it. Okay. And as Cameron said, my father and uncle by that time had taken over the business. But unfortunately, my father and uncle, they just did not get on together. You've probably heard the story of Addie Dassler and Rudy Dassler, the Dassler family, they didn't get on either. But Rudy had the good sense to leave and go and set up Puma. Unfortunately, the Foster family feuded and feuded and feuded, and the company was going nowhere. Right, I did have some education after being 10. I went to college, and by 17, though, not knowing what to do, I left college and joined the Foster family business. And okay, that's all right. You don't notice anything. But at 18 years old, we had to do national service. We were taken away to do 2 years. I did it in the RAF, the Air Force, and Jeff did it in the Army, and he went to Germany. And in Germany, he sees Adidas, he sees Puma. So when we come back 2 years later, you know, you learn an awful lot. Your parents are not there. Mother's not doing the washing. You know, she's not making your meals. You've got to look after yourself. You learn how to live a little bit differently. And when we came back, we look at our company. We look at the Foster company. And it's failing. And we say, Dad, we've got to do something. This company is failing. All my father could say is, when your uncle's gone and I've gone, it's going to be your company. You can do what you want with it. I said, look, Dad, we don't want you to go in the first place. Next, this company will be gone long before you're gone. Okay. The day came when I had to tell my father that Jeff and myself, we decided to set up our own company and we were leaving. It wasn't a very comfortable meeting, I can tell you. It wasn't very comfortable, no. But we left. And we left and we went to the next town and we'd set up our own little factory. In between times, we'd actually gone to college to learn about shoemaking. We knew how to make spike running shoes and one or two other things, but we didn't really know how to engineer them, how to construct. So we went to college for that, and we were ready. So in 1958, we left the Foster family, and we set up our own little factory called Mercury Sports Footwear.
Mercury Sports Footwear, branching off. What was the specialization here with the shoes? Did you take some of the expertise from your grandfather's, your father's business? What differed here?
Well, we did, but I don't know, we were being very nice, and we decided to make cycle shoes. My brother, he was a keen cyclist, he was a keen runner. I wasn't. I preferred to play badminton. I preferred a game as against running. I hated running. Oh, absolutely. You should read my book. I hated shoemaking as well. But we set up our little factory as Mercury, and as I say, we started with cycle shoes instead of competing with athletic shoes. But it wasn't long, really. I think probably 12 months, and because we knew the local athletic club, they used to come in and, why are you not making running shoes? So we started making running shoes, and that was okay. However, we're 18 months into our nice business, and our accountant, he came along and said, look guys, you're doing very nicely, you'd better register that name. We were young. Why? Why do we need to register a name? Well, your shoes are good. And if other people see these shoes and decide they'll make some Mercury shoes, you've then got a problem. And you don't want that sort of problem. Okay then, so what do? So he pointed me in the direction of a patent agent in Manchester, our nearest big city. And I went to see him. And in the meantime, he'd searched out and found that Mercury was already registered. So he told me, he said, you can buy it off them though. It was British Shoe Corporation, a big footwear company, but £1,000. I said, look, we've just set up a factory, a whole factory for £250. We don't have £1,000. Oh, right. He said, you can take them to court, and because they're not using it right now, and sort of get a judgment. I said, how much will that cost? He said, £1,000. Oh, I said, well, what's the alternative? I said, well, you have to change your name. Oh, I said, look, we're in love with our company. You know, change your name. He said, yeah, but don't bring me one name, bring me 10. names? How do you do that? Oh. Anyway, he said, well, you can't take them through the register one at a time because it could take you 5 months, 6 months, maybe even 12 months if you do it one at a time. Okay, so we went back. We're sitting around the table and thinking, new names. Cougar Sports. That sounds pretty good. How about that? Falcon. That's another good name, Falcon Sports. But let me take you back to 1943. I'm 8 years old. And just like COVID, nobody could go anywhere. The war, it was the middle of the war, we couldn't do anything. Except we did have local events. And we had a local running race, and I won a 60-yard sprint. I said I didn't like running, I don't, but I won the race. I had a bit of an advantage because I was wearing spike running shoes. And with 1943 spike running shoes, none of the competition had spike running shoes, so maybe that was a big advantage, but I won the race. And I go up to collect my my prize, right? And what do they give me? A dictionary. And I'm saying, guys, where's the football? Come on, I'm 8 years old. What do I need with a dictionary? I didn't realize at the time, but it was a fairly historic moment, because the dictionary was an American dictionary. It was a Webster's dictionary. Now, what on earth was a Webster's dictionary doing in 1943 in the war in England? I have no idea. However, fast forward, 1960, we're looking for a new name. And my dictionary sat there on the table. So I pick it up. You know, I like the letter R. Nice, strong R. Right. I open my book at R, and I'm thumbing through. And it's not long before you come to R-E-E-B-O-K. What's that? Reebok. A small South African gazelle. Gazelle? We're a running company. That's it, gazelle. Top of the list. Right. With my other 9 names, I take it back to the agent. And he said, okay. I said, look, we need this one. He said, look, you know, he's a lawyer. He's like, whatever. So, a week later, he came on the telephone and said, Joe, he said, the only name of all these that you've given me is, in fact, Reebok. You can have Reebok. Oh, brilliant. One caveat. The registrar has said that if somebody comes along and says they're making shoes out of Reebok skin, you can't stop them. Well, Jeff and I thought, that's never going to happen. No, nobody will do that. But there was a caveat with that, and that was the fact that because of that, they put us in Part B of the register. A register's a register to me, Part B. So 10 years later, the registrar came back and said, we've moved it to Part A of the register because now everybody knows that Reebok is a running shoe.
Such an amazing story, a glimpse of the story there. What were the early roles, you and your brother Jeff, before you had massive staffing joining the business? What were your roles? Were you physically making the shoes as well?
I started off with Jeff probably for 18 months or so, maybe a bit longer than that. I helped in the factory. We both made shoes, and we were making shoes for local athletes. But then we started to look beyond that, and I said, look, I'll look after the sales. And Jeff is delighted. He said, well, great, look, leave me with the factory. You do everything else. Right, everything else. Okay. That was life, everything else. What is everything else? So yes, I started to go out in my car, local sports shops, and beyond that to other sports shops, taking my shoes and going in to see the buyer and saying, I'm Reebok. Right? Who's Reebok? Well, I'm Reebok. Here's my shoes, look. Well, look pretty good, those shoes. Yeah, but look, I've got Adidas and I've got Dunlop. Why do I need Reebok? Big question. Why did he need Reebok? That hit home. He didn't need Reebok. No, he didn't. So that was the end of my salesman's career. we used to go to local events and we used to sell out of the back of the car. And running was becoming quite popular. And I'm looking around thinking, no, the retailer, that sports shop doesn't need my shoes. These guys need my shoes. Right. And we were very lucky. In the UK, we had the Amateur Athletic Association, the 3As, and they produced a handbook. And every club in the country was in the handbook, and the name and address of the secretary. That was about 400 clubs. Okay, a letter to every club. We'll give you 15% off if you'll sell our shoes. And if somebody in the club wants to become an agent, he can have the 15%. I got 100 agents from one letter. And the second letter got me another 50 agents. We ended up with about 350 agents selling our shoes direct. Then what happens? The sports shops, the retailers, they're on the telephone. You're selling your shoes direct to our local athletic club. Yes. Well, look, if you stop doing that, we'll stock your shoes. I'm thinking, no. And I said, no, we're not going to stop selling shoes direct. They only get 15%. You can have the shoes at wholesale, and I'm sure you will give 15% off to your local club. We'll advertise you're selling our shoes. Right. 90% of the guys who phoned me, they accepted that. So we're starting to grow. And at that point, I need a distributor in the UK.
Amazing. But moving on to, I know there's such an important role of the shows you attend. As we know, home shows, home expos, product shows, there's a big component in the apparel and shoe shows. And this was your chance to come international to the United States. If you can explain the journey and the transition to coming to the US, I know there's a Chicago show you ended up attending, and what importance that played on the future and success of Reebok.
Yeah. Well, by now, we were growing quite nicely. And we'd sit around the table with the wives, of course, and sort of, I'd be saying, we need to get to America. No, it's too expensive. You can't do that. We were making a bit of money, but not that much. However, it wasn't long after that conversation, I'm reading a magazine called Eurosport, and the British government are advertising that they wanted us to export. And they would pay for a return airfare to Chicago. They would also pay for a stand at the NSJ show, the National Sporting Goods of America show, and half of our hotel bill and expenses whilst we're out there. I didn't get any more objections. You can go. So off I went, and this was 1968. 1968. I went with a friend, and the government were paying for the airfare, but I don't know why. We took a cheap fare, but we had to stay for 2 weeks to get this cheap fare. I don't know why we did that, but we went to New York. My friend Bob, he was an outdoor retailer. He went to have a look at the outdoor stores. I went to have a look at the sports goods stores, and yeah, that was that. Then we went on to Chicago. Stand, great. Retailers coming up saying, wow, lovely product. Where do you get this from? And I'm saying, well, England. And they're saying, is that New England? No, not New England. The old one, across the water. I said, is that near London? Yeah, near London. That's the one. I realized at that moment, there's no chance. I'll not get into the American market unless I have a distributor. I need that. I need somebody to stock the shoes. 1968. When did I get into the market? 1979. A long time. 11 years of pushing, trying to get in to the American market. But pushing is tough. But you know, what happened during the 70s, right? Really late 60s, running became a big category here in America. Big. And started to grow. And with it a magazine called Runner's World. And by 1975, Runner's World had grown from a single sheet to a full, glossy, 100-page magazine telling everybody where the next race was, who won the races. So it was a Bible. And you'd got, we'll say 350 million people living in America. About 35 million by that time had taken up running. Great. So the magazine was doing really, really well. And Bob Anderson, who published the magazine, he decided he knew this business so well that he could tell everybody what the #1 running shoe was. And he did. And it was a Nike, of course. and you can imagine 35 million runners. Somebody tells you this is the #1 running shoe. 10% of those wanted that shoe. So you got 3.5 million runners wanted to buy that shoe. And Phil Knight, Nike, he's importing those shoes from Japan. Never happened. Turning up that production just didn't work. So the retailers in America are really getting tired of this because they can't get the shoe everybody wants. And then Bob Anderson changes his mind, well, not changed his mind, but changed the #1 shoe. And I think the next #1 shoe was a New Balance. So we were advertising his magazine, and actually I went across there and paid a visit to Bob Anderson in his office, and we had a good chat. But something changed his mind, and instead of going on with telling everybody the #1 shoe, he changed it to a star rating. And 5 stars would be the top shoe, but you get 4 or 5 shoes, 5 stars. And I knew we could make a 5-star shoe. We were in the business. I knew we could make that. A #1 shoe, nah, too much of a lottery, that one. But we could make a 5-star shoe. And by 1978, we had our shoe Aztec. And we tested this out at the Commonwealth Games in Edmonton, along with another 2 pairs of shoes. Aztec was the trainer, Inca was a spike shoe, and Midas was a racing shoe, road racing shoe. That was our gold range. And we got a shed load of medals at Edmonton. Great. So, February 1979, I'm back here in Chicago, just round the bend. And I have my Aztec. And I think almost my first visitor was Kmart. Kmart said, we want 25,000 pairs. We still hadn't got a 5-star shoe, but running was becoming such a big category that they wanted in on it. 25,000 pairs. That was about 6 months' work for our factory back home in the UK. However, we knew that if we did get a 5-star shoe, the demand could actually be much beyond our factory. So I knew a few people at Barter, who were then, well, the biggest shoemakers in the world. They said they would help. Fine, it was great. But Kmart said that, but we want a better price. Oh. Again, we realized that this would probably come up, and it meant going to Asia, South Korea, in fact. And we had a contact there also. So we could do that. Fine. A little later, during the show, came Paul Fireman. You may well have heard of Paul Fireman, I don't know. But Paul Fireman came along, and he was running an outdoor Boston camping with his brother, Steve, and his brother-in-law, Terry. But I could see he was pretty well fed up of doing what they were doing. They were selling tents and fishing rods, and they've probably been doing the same for 10 years. And he said, look, Joe, if you get a 5-star shoe, I want to be your distributor. Wow, great. I mean, up to that point, I had 6 failed attempts at distributors from all over Pennsylvania and wherever. And they'd all failed, but we were trying to push. If we got a 5-star shoe, that would be the hook. That would pull us into the market. And I was saying to Paul, look, this is a 5-star shoe. I said, no, it's not a 5-star shoe yet. The ratings don't come out till August. I know, I said, but this is going to be it. Well, he said, if you get it, I'm your man. Okay. We're in February. August is the time when the magazine comes out. And so I took a trip back. I think it was about May when I went back into America and had a look at Kmart. I think the buy-in, the warehouse, all these people, it was about as big as this audience, all sitting there, different buyers. And my buyer was about row 10 and whatever. So I went along, and yeah, he's really keen. I'd really love to have 25,000 pairs. But I'm thinking, we're a small factory, we're a small brand. if we don't satisfy his demands for the profit they make on the footage they give us, that would be my first and last 25,000 pairs. So I then went on to see Paul Fireman in Boston, and I liked them. They were small, little outfit, and Reebok, yeah, it'd be nice to bolt Reebok onto this. It'd be a nice little company. Yeah, that would do us nicely. So I'm back home. The last week in July, that's when the August edition would come out, I phoned Paul Fireman and said, Paul, can you go down to the little kiosk? I'm sure the magazine will be out now. An hour later, he came back. Joe, Aztec, 5 stars. Wow. That was it. He said, but not only that, Inca and Midas also got 5 stars. So that was the hook. We had 3 5 stars, and we could get into the American market.
Grabbing such an amazing review there. That I know you've been working so hard on the retail expansion and international expansion, and that was such a vital piece of the success. What role does athletes and endorsements and sponsorships, what do they come in, the influence they have to endorse your shoe, your personal shoe? What was the role with that?
Well, I guess that, that does come in, but you've got to be able to afford that sort of program. And then running, yeah, we had a nice program going in America. We had Sidney Marie, I don't know if you remember Sidney Marie. He broke the, I think it was the New York, they had run down Fifth Avenue. I think it was a mile long, and he won that as well. So yeah, athletes were good. But we didn't grow with running. Surprisingly enough, that wasn't what happened with Reebok. We had a technical rep down in Los Angeles, and he would go into the stores and he would talk to the salespeople and say, this is the good things about the Reebok shoe. But his wife, Frankie, she was coming home from aerobic classes. And Arnold said, what are aerobic classes? And she said, well, we're exercising to music. Really? She was full of it, and her friends as well. So next time, Arnold went down there, and he saw the instructor with a pair of sneakers. We think they might have been New Balance at the time because they didn't make a white one, all white. And half the class were wearing sneakers, the other half not wearing any shoes at all. This was a light bulb moment for Arnold. He thought, why don't we make a specific shoe for aerobics, just for women, on a woman's last, woman's sizes. Fantastic. He's in LA. So he took the red eye up to Boston the following day, sit down with Paul Fireman, and he's telling him the story. This is fantastic. These girls, absolutely. Paul's saying, slow down, Arnold. We're a running company. What do we want to be doing making dancing shoes for girls? And he said to Arnold, look, go back, watch it, and if it really starts growing, we'll get into it. But Arnold wasn't satisfied with that. He went round to the back door and had a word with Steve Liggett. Liggett was our production man. And he must have been more convincing with Steve than with Paul, because he got his samples. In fact, he got 200 pairs, and took them back down to LA, gave them to the instructors, gave them to some of the girls down there, and that was it. And when Jane Fonda actually went out and bought a pair of these shoes and used them in her videos, her exercise videos, the company just took off. We've become a woman's company, a woman's athletic shoe company. And that was us. We were a $9 million business at that point. A year later, we were a $30 million business. And after that, $90 million, $300 million, then $900 million. In other words, we've gone almost from 0 to 1 billion in just over 4 years. And that was the difference. That's what made Reebok.
So I know we are restricted on time, but such an amazing story. If you could share with the audience, so much perseverance, starting from J.W. Foster and Sons, just a local shop all the way to a global brand we recognize today. What's like a piece of advice as a founder, an experienced founder? You still see your apparel out there today. What's a nice piece you could provide to the audience?
Well, There's a load of advice you can give, but you know, the most important one when people ask me, what is really the most important thing? Have fun. Have fun. And you know, the second one is have more fun. And the third is more and more fun. Because if you're not having fun, it's going to be tough. It's tough anyway. You know, there's sometimes when you just get knocked back. We had to change our name. Shortly after that, we got a letter from Adidas, the Adidas lawyers, to say that our silhouette then was 2 stripes and a T-bar. And they said that infringed the 3-stripe mark. And we were a bit sort of destroyed for about 5 minutes. What do we do? And then we pinned that up on the wall and said, Adidas know we're here. Yeah. They found out we must be a threat. We're a small company. But what did we do? A simple thing. Change the silhouette. And we changed it to the Vector, which was like the name we changed from Mercury, we got to Reebok. And changing from 2 stripes and a T-bar, we would change to the Vector. Much more, it was different. And that was an improvement. So, you know, what you find out, and what we found out, and always that if you're going to go anywhere, expect problems. And those are challenges. Just like failures, they're challenges. You can get up and start again. And with a problem, how can you turn that into an advantage? And so, looking for the advantage out of a problem, you know, it changes your view on whatever you're doing. You must be doing something wrong if you get a problem. So let's change it. So, yes, you've got to have a bit of longevity. You've got to be able to stay with it, and you've got to love what you're doing. And if you love what you're doing and you have that excitement, you'll build a team, and that team will also share that excitement. And that's what we did. Everybody loved it. We built a winning culture, and if you have that, your chances of success are far better than if you're not enjoying every day. But I'm saying not enjoy. You don't enjoy every day. But if you get up with the wrong idea, then yeah, it's tough. So have fun.
Amazing. Well, to the audience, the full panel will come out here shortly, so gather your questions if you have any questions directed towards a specific speaker, and we're going to open up the audience Q&A session here soon. And Joe, again, thank you so much. It really means a lot.
It's a pleasure.